How to disclose relationships, activities, and potential conflicts of interest.
For industry-sponsored research, it's really very important to make sure that all the disclosures regarding relationships of all the authors to any of the companies be fully transparent.
Bias is important to address in terms of potential financial biases that can sway the way a paper is written. It's important that biases are declared if they exist.
Authors should avoid bias and strive for objectivity in all aspects of their work. Some sources of potential bias that may compromise objectivity include professional interests, personal beliefs and values, and financial relationships. When researchers submit their work to a journal or congress, they should be prepared to disclose any activities or relationships that have the potential to compromise the objectivity of their work or could be perceived to influence their professional judgment. Some activities or relationships may provide financial or personal benefits that can potentially bias or be perceived to bias the publication. These activities and relationships are often called conflicts of interest or competing interests. Potential conflicts of interest can include financial and personal relationships, non-financial relationships or support, academic commitments, institutional affiliations, and personal beliefs. An example of a financial relationship is an academic investigator whose research is supported by a grant or other funds from a company producing drugs that treat the disease they study. Another example is travel support, such as when a company pays for a researcher to travel to a meeting to give a talk or presentation. An example of a non-financial relationship is having a non-paid role on a company board. Because the term conflicts of interest implies actual rather than potential conflicts, thinking in terms of providing disclosures can foster full communication of all engagements. When preparing your research for publication or presentation, search for disclosure requirements on the journal or congress website. If the journal or congress does not have specific disclosure requirements, follow the guidance published in Good Publication Practice, or GPP, and provided by the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, or ICMJE. Authors are expected to be thorough and accurate when preparing their disclosure statement, so it is important that you carefully consider all your activities and relationships. As you prepare your disclosures, start by reviewing your employment and all support or services you received that directly assisted you with your work from planning to completion. If you are currently or were previously an employee of the study sponsor, this should be disclosed. Similarly, disclose whether you, a spouse, or relative are or were employed by a company that received funding to conduct the research. Next, develop a list of financial payments from a commercial sponsor, government agency, or private foundation, which includes research grants or other sources of research funding. Then disclose any non-financial support for any portion of the submitted work. Consider including a separate acknowledgement statement in your article stating the role of others, including the study sponsor, in the design of the study, data gathering, statistical analysis, or writing of the paper. Next, consider any broader, potentially relevant activities and relationships. These activities or interactions may not have directly assisted your research, but could still affect or be affected by your publication. If a time period is not specified, review your activities and relationships over the past 36 months, per guidance from the ICMJE and Good Publication Practice. Make note of any paid travel expenses, honoraria, consulting fees, or participation in paid lectures, expert testimonies, or speakers' bureaus. Since stock equity can be influenced by the success of clinical studies, it's important to disclose if you hold individual shares or employee-based stock options offered by a company. It is not necessary to declare ownership of mutual funds, as the individual stocks within a mutual fund are not under the owner's control. Intellectual property connected to your work could also be considered a relevant conflict of interest. This includes patents, copyrights, and associated royalties. Take time to examine any relevant relationships or activities involving close family members as you would for yourself, including whether a close family member holds shares or employee-based stock options offered by a company. Finally, consider any other activities or relationships not already covered. Think about if there are any other activities you spend time on that could affect or be affected by your research, such as advocacy work. If you have doubts about whether a relationship or activity is important to disclose, contact the journal's editorial office. It is ultimately better to provide all engagements rather than to under-disclose. Providing complete and accurate disclosures builds the trust of readers and the community. Be sure to update your disclosures regularly to be able to report them more easily in future publications. Once you make the decision to participate in an activity or relationship, you will need to disclose it in all your publications. Keep in mind that disclosing a relationship is not an admission of inappropriate bias or misconduct, but indicates to the reader that your relationships could possibly influence your work. Providing inaccurate or inconsistent disclosures could cause a delay in the review or publication of your manuscript. If a discrepancy is noted after your manuscript has been published, you may be required to publish a correction. Failure to disclose potential conflicts appropriately may damage your credibility as a researcher. In extreme cases, there may be other penalties such as a loss of employment or damage to your personal reputation. A number of initiatives have recently emerged to help manage the complexities associated with disclosures. Developed by the Association of American Medical Colleges, Convey is a disclosure management system that allows individuals to add disclosures to a personal database. The disclosures can be retrieved by the individual or journal for manuscript submissions. If you store your disclosures within Convey, a disclosure form can be printed and submitted with your manuscript. Many professional societies have their own disclosure policies, practices, and forms for their members. Check to see if you belong to any societies that have a database to assist with reporting your disclosures. Another useful resource is ORCID, a not-for-profit organization that helps you to build an online professional profile linked to a specific ORCID ID. An ORCID ID can help journals manage identities and attributions when reviewing manuscript submissions. This system may help you keep your disclosures up to date as funders or employers can add information to your record with your approval. As you develop your profile or enter information into a disclosure database, remember to carefully document your activities and relationships, their dates, and any monetary amounts that may be involved, and regularly update this information. Disclose all types of engagements, relationships, and activities that could affect or be perceived to affect the objectivity of your work. Take care to keep your disclosures accurate, up-to-date, comprehensive, and consistent. This will help to maintain trust and confidence in the integrity of your research and personal reputation.